And we are live. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another BP TV. Really appreciate you guys tuning in. We have a very controversial subject to dig into today, which doesn't really, it gets joked around about, but BJJ has a steroid problem. That's right. A lot of people don't want to talk about it, but this is the truth. If we look at all the top performers in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, the majority of them have been popped for steroids, performance enhancing drugs from all kinds of different things, whether it be upping their energy, increasing their testosterone, all these different things mean that our sport is not really clean. And as much as WADA or USADA is involved, because Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is not a professional sport, as in there's not as much money in the paying of the top athletes, and there's not as much money in the organization as, say, the NBA or the NFL or UEFA or some big sporting organizations that have hundreds of millions of dollars, billions of dollars. They don't put the money into testing. And this was actually brought up recently by Fionn Davies at the No-Gi Worlds, which she won. So she's a two-time No-Gi world champion now. And she was like, I didn't get drug tested. Maybe we should have a look at some of the people who are on the podium, because maybe they should get drug tested. Because the IBJJF had said, we will drug test all of the gold medal winners. And she's like, well, I didn't get tested, because they have to pay. I think it's anywhere from $3,500 to $5,000 for the drug testing. It's an expensive thing, right? So the IBJJF just wants to make money. They're not actually that interested in cleaning up the sport. And we can look at that by the penalties they hand out. So let's look at the 4 subjects we're going to get into today. If you guys have anything that you want to talk about or questions you want to ask, feel free to put it in the comments on the side. I actually had somebody not just on Thursday accuse me of being on steroids. And I was like, man, that's a joke. If you know how long I've been lifting weights and eating food, you know that I'm not even that big. Like, mate, if I was on steroids, I'll be 120 kilos. Don't kid yourself. I am morally against steroids in sport. Now, for medical purposes, sure, people need steroids to help their immune systems. But if you're a professional athlete, me personally, I believe that you should not take drugs. So let's just put that out there right now. I am dead set against it. I think it's bullshit. And me personally, I have never taken any performance-enhancing drugs in my life other than caffeine. Ooh, but that's legal, boy. Now, here's the thing. Here's the deal. Understand this, my friends. We really don't compare to other sports. Now, when we suspend athletes, like top athletes, and I'm going to name a couple today, I've done my research. The maximum suspension I saw was 2 years, and that was Polo Miao. That's right. The skinniest, littlest dude in jiu-jitsu getting done for steroids. Believe it. Now, there's different reasons why people would take different amounts of performance-enhancing drugs, but top performers only getting suspended for 12 months, not a lifetime ban, not like career ending, just like, you have 12 months off, or you go do some other, make money doing this sport some other way. Not a real penalty. You got stripped of that title. But if you want, you can go compete at the ADCC, or you can go and do whatever else you want, right? So this is a big problem. People are not really penalized for their drug use. It's like, shame. You're back, champion. Hooray, you're the best. So we're going to have a look at that and say, the penalties really are not promoting for people to stop taking steroids. Number 2 is we are turning a blind eye. Now, I was at the ADCC in 2019, and Andre Galvão was the juiciest human I have seen other than a pro bodybuilder, or Rodolfo Vieira, who in his prime looked like a pro bodybuilder. Also, Muhammad Ali, he's a big, strong human, no doubt, but he looked so immense. I think he was like 130 kilos. He was gigantic, the biggest he has ever been. This is a guy who's competed at middle heavy. For him to beef up to super heavyweight is crazy. So we've got to look at this and go, we all know they're on drugs. We all joke about it. There's memes all over the internet. it's all, it's kind of funny. It's terrible. Oh, what we got? He got 4 years off the CrossFit Games for peptides. That's right. Yeah, well, look, a lot of people don't realize that Ricky was probably on steroids. I know somebody who's known him since he was young. Ricky was on steroids when he was younger. He was going to be a footy player. And the team, when he was very young, were looking at him as a prospect, and they tested him. They're like, bro, your testosterone is off the charts. You need to get off whatever you're on. You can't play here. So just in speaking to that, Adrian, Ricky has been on gear for a little while. So the fact that he got done at the CrossFit Games is kind of like, a lot of people don't know this, but it's just, we expect top level performance, but we don't understand what it takes. And if the standards have been set by people who use drugs, how are you going to go beyond those standards naturally? It's a really hard question, right? Now, we're turning a blind eye. We know it's done, but we just go, no, that's okay. He didn't get tested. That's fine. The ADCC is a circus in terms of it's like juice them up as big as you can, come in as big and strong as you can, and go mental, right? Kind of like Pride and the UFC back in the late 90s, early 2000s. Such good fights when they're all on steroids, They're so aggressive and strong, and no one seemed to get injured. Back in the days when Vitor Belfort looked like a monster instead of like a dad bod has-been, which is what he looks like after drug testing. Mind you, other end of his career. So there is a definite like cognitive dissonance where we're like, we know people are taking drugs, but we just accept it, even though we might say we're against it. So we've got to really actually be a lot more open in the discussion and go, should we have a clean version of jiu-jitsu, like a natty, a natural, I do not take steroids tested federation, and then an untested federation like powerlifting, because there are definitely tested leagues where everybody's drug tested for the powerlifting. And then there's others like WPO where they don't care. They're kind of like, do whatever you like, just get really strong. All right. And they do it like that. So I think this is an important thing to understand, that maybe jiu-jitsu needs a change to say, these are the athletes who are working really hard without steroids, and these are the guys who are maxing out. Something to think about. Then, why is steroid abuse so widespread in jiu-jitsu? Why are so many people doing this? Like, how easy or hard is it for people to get access to these drugs? And why is it that we don't talk about it more? Why is it everywhere and no one's really talking about it that much? It's important, and that's why I'm doing this discussion today. And the fourth, guys, is how can we clean up competition in the name of the art? Because really at the heart of jiu-jitsu, so this is so funny, right? The saddest irony of all jiu-jitsu is, don't use your strength, like focus on your technique. Now, really what they're saying here is, if you're not particularly technical and you force it, you're missing the point of the understanding, which is jiu-jitsu, which is the knowledge to be able to use skill against just brute force. But obviously, if you have someone who's skilled and they're also really powerful, that's a very potent combination. So I think it's a bit of a fallacy to say, people don't use your strengths. Everyone uses strengths. It's the same as saying, don't use your fitness. If you're fit, you go harder because you're fit enough. Same way, if you're flexible, you can't say to someone, hey, look, could you just dial down the flexibility a little bit? Like, I'm having a really hard time with your guard because you're so flexible. If you could be a bit less flexible, that would make life easier for me. But here's the thing, guys. You can improve your fitness, improve your strength, and improve your flexibility naturally. And that's within the balance. That's within the rules, right? It's up to you, your time and dedication. But when it comes to changing the chemical structure internally, or in terms of your ability to rebuild your muscles, recover your nervous system, the level of force production that you can generate through your nervous system, all these things can be chemically enhanced, and that's not within the rules. So how do we come back to the heart of the art, which is technique and getting smarter, as opposed to just getting super brute strong and also having super endurance, which is enhanced, so we can overcome people who maybe do not have that? That sounds like a pretty unfair fight. That sounds pretty un-jiu-jitsu to me. So guys, we're going to get into that. So without any delay, let's do it. Today is a quick one. I'm not going to beat around the bush. I'm going to get brutal. So if you would like to ask a question, please pop it in the side and I will get to it straight away. First things first, how does BJJ compare to other sports in treating drug abuse? Well, it doesn't actually. So the IBJJF, I believe it was only 5 years ago, said, oh, we're going to bring in drug testing. We're going to clean up this sport. Actually, it was 7 years ago. I apologize. So case in point, Philippe Pena in 2014, and I was at the Worlds that year, he beat Andre Galvão in a very tightly contested final and became the world heavyweight champion as a black belt. Woo! Only 3 or 4 months later, very quietly though, tested positive to, I think it was called like kleptopromethylene, whatever. Anyway, it's something that helps boost your testosterone. And he did a deal. He's a rat, as they say in a New York kind of gangster way. He ratted out who he got his drugs from, and so they cut him a deal. He had a 12-month suspension. They stripped him of his title. Now, Andre Galvão got really mad because Atos, if Andre Galvão had won that match, which he thinks he would have if Philippe Pena was not on steroids, Atos would have won the team trophy, which would have dethroned Alliance, the great adversaries, Atos and Alliance, right? But Alliance still kept the team trophy. And Andre Galvão went on a tear, just complaining about, oh, it's not fair. These drug cheats are blah, blah, right? Andre Galvão, when he fought Philippe Pena at the last ADCC, was on more steroids than most humans could possibly handle. Now, he wasn't tested, right? He wasn't tested, so we couldn't really, we can't really say for sure, like confirm, but look at his physique and you compare his physique at the age of 37 compared to when he was 32. He is leaner and has more muscle mass than almost any other athlete at the competition other than Muhammad Ali. Is ridiculous. I sat next to Andre Galvão at that comp. He was colossal. He was so thick. I don't even know what he weighed in at. Like, he's a little bit shorter than me, and I think he probably weighed in over 100 kilos. He was gigantic. So how do you do that? You do that with drugs, friends. And there was no drug testing, right? That's the ADCC. So we're going to relate this back to the IBJJF. I'm going to have a look at how do we deal with drug abuse in our sport. So from an IBJJF perspective, here's another sad irony. Kanan Duarte, he got a 12-month suspension for taking, testosterone boosters in the year that he won $100,000 in the Spider Korea comp to win the heavyweight title there. So they didn't take his $100,000 off him. He still got to keep that. He also won the world championship, right? He got a 12-month suspension. Now, only 12 months. If we compare this to like a Maria Sharapova, now, I don't know if you guys remember Maria Sharapova, famous tennis player, she got suspended for, I think, 3 years, and actually it was extended for taking PEDs. But when I was like researching it, they wouldn't name the drug she took. I think there was like one specific substance which is meant to help endurance, and then something else, but they didn't name it in the report. So that was right in the prime of her career. And so really, Maria Sharapova hasn't gotten up in the same kind of way that she had when she had her full momentum, right? So that really shortened up her career. Let's look at Braulio Estima. I love Braulio. He's a great guy. Also got popped for PEDs, performance-enhancing drugs. What was his suspension? 12 months. Okay, it's not very much, right? The longest suspension I could find was actually 2 years, and that was Paulo Miao. So here's the thing, guys. We have this conception that people who take steroids are massive, and that's not necessarily true. Because here's something else a lot of people do not know. The Mendes brothers, who I admire for their jiu-jitsu, both retired in their primes. Both of them smashing almost everyone, not losing matches. Both of them 4-time world champions. I think Rafael Mendes might be 5-time world champions, right? In their mid to late 20s, retiring. Why? Why did they just retire? Even Rafa Mendes, the year he retired, he was only a couple months out from competing at the World Championship. And then he just went, no, I'm going to retire. Even though at the start of the year, he said he would contest his world title. Why? This is why, my friends. This is something that we don't realize. This is behind the scenes. Now, if you don't know who the Mendes brothers are, I'll let you know. Like, these guys are some of the best of all time. Guy and Rafa Mendes, some of the greatest feather and lightweight competitors in the gi and no gi of all time, right? If you don't know who they are, you can Google them. They were cut deals. So when they were approached by WADA, I think it's WADA, it could be USADA, you have to double check, that essentially they said, you've tested positive to a banned substance. If you retire, we will not release the results that you've tested positive to steroids. So guess what? They didn't want to hurt their brand. They retired and they started AOJ online and made way more money off the internet than they could have made teaching seminars or doing anything else, right? So here's the thing. Oh, wow. Adrian's just said he trained in Brazil and was offered juice on the mats on day one. Now, I'm going to tell you something right now, guys. I have a friend who trained with the Mendes brothers in Brazil, and he said there were needles in the bins, in the change rooms, and that they openly talked about steroid abuse in the gym. That was before they moved to America. So I'm not saying this because I'm hating. I'm saying that when you start to talk about it and kind of dig deeper into the culture, you realize, man, all these guys are on freaking steroids. It's crazy. And like, I'm going to say one person I know for sure who's not on steroids, Bernardo Faria. I have talked to Bernardo up close and personal. I've asked him. Now, Bernardo actually used to be a very chubby guy, and he got lean and he got strong, but he never took steroids. That was a standard of his. And he was actually approached by a specific nutritionist doctor who was trying to get him on the gear. And he was like, no, I don't want that. No, that's nothing to do with me. And he just flat out refused and kind of cut this guy off. So funny, because only 6 months later, he saw a photo with Rodolfo Vieira with his nutrition doctor going, oh, my new nutritionist. Oh, he's a good friend of mine. Mate, Rodolfo Vieira, I got to tell you, you go back to 2012 and look at the photos of Rodolfo Vieira. That guy is on steroids. Now, this sounds like mudslinging, right? Like, I'm not hating, guys, but be honest with yourselves. When you look at the photos of these humans, and these guys are training crazy hours a day, when you look at an endurance athlete, somebody who does train 4, 6, however many hours a day at an Olympic or international standard, they're very slim because it's hard to keep muscle when you're constantly breaking it down. How are you going to maintain hundreds, like 100 kilos, like maybe not 100 kilos, but like 60 kilos of muscle when you compare that to your skeleton of just sheer lean mass when you're constantly breaking it down? It is enhancement. It is almost impossible to do. Now, for any of you out there who've tried to build muscle, you know that you have to eat so much protein and work so hard to try and just keep your body growing without doing jiu-jitsu. You put jiu-jitsu in the mix, like professional training load of jiu-jitsu in the mix, you will absolutely not be able to keep added kilos of muscle on. You're going to reduce to your bare minimum, whatever that looks like. And yeah, sure, you'll be lean, but you will not be huge and jacked. It is that simple. So it is easier to get steroids in some countries than others. This is true. Now, a lot of people, you know, they might throw shade on Brazil, but culturally, it is easier to get performance-enhancing drugs through doctors in Brazil, because if you've got the money to do it, it's not frowned on if you're an everyday person. If you want to get some growth hormone, you can get some. If you're rich, sure. You're a playboy, you want to get jacked for summer, you can get some growth hormone. They'll hook you up. It's not so frowned on. And women too. There's women who really want to get them abs and they don't want to do the diet. So it's like, oh, here's some growth hormone. But watch out. Your hands are going to get big. Believe that, my friends. A lot of lean ladies in Brazil with them bigger hands. Just saying. Guys, we're turning a blind eye because we want performance. We want to see the super fights. Yeah, over the counter in Thailand. That's right. Plenty of guys go to Thailand for a training camp and get really jacked. Let's talk about our man Ziz, right? I don't know if you remember an aesthetics guy called Aziz, from many years ago, not even that many years ago, who died of a heart attack in a sauna. And the guys had gone to Thailand to like lift weights, get easy to access steroids and get really jacked and then come back, have a steroid holiday. And he died of a massive heart attack. And he was really young. I believe he's only 21 or 22. And he looked healthy. He looked good. And there was plenty of men being like, oh, Ziz bra, chest bra, God. He's gone. It doesn't mean anything now. Now, he wasn't a professional athlete, but this is something that pretty much all combat athletes are aware of, right? Like how many guys in MMA have been popped for steroids? So many. Anderson Silva. Let's look at, not that like he's like super, Ryan Bader, Clay Guida, Paulo Costa, your boy, Mr. No Neck, can't move, Cuban wrestler. His name escapes me. I'm sorry. You guys can put it in the comments. Yoel Romero. That's what I'm talking about. Like Cuba has always had problems with athletes testing positive to steroids, right? You look at Yoel Romero. He's an old guy. How can he be that lean and that jacked? That's right. Steroids. So it's one of those things that we want performance and we're prepared to accept people breaking the rules to have great performance. Guys, should we just change the rules? Should we just say, hey, like I'd heard this many years ago, should we just go, all bets are off, everyone take as many drugs as you can and let's just see what happens. Just take as many steroids as you can and let's just see, where that goes. Well, I mean, you can look at sports like pro bodybuilding and know it's going to result in deaths, because when people really abuse steroids to the maximum effect, you're going to get more heart attacks. You're going to get more liver failures. You're going to get more kidney complications because it affects your organs. Now, for those of you out there who are just like, oh, yeah, the Ream. My God, Alistair Overeem. He went to Japan and just, if you look at Alistair Overeem earlier in his career, he was a pretty slim dude. I mean, muscular, but slim. And then you look at him like later in his career and he's bigger than Brock Lesnar. Giant. Did that help his career? Questionable, right? So here's the deal, guys. Do we need to look at it and go expect less and get our athletes natural? Or do we change the rules and go, you know what? We don't test and look, it's, run your own risk. Take steroids at your own risk. I don't think so. I think this is actually anti-jiu-jitsu. I think steroid use in the sport of jiu-jitsu, it just indicates how unprofessional our sport is. And really, if we want jiu-jitsu to move forward and get better, we need better training, better nutrition, better knowledge of how to improve your body so people can learn that you can be really strong without steroids. I am a case in point, but I have been lifting weights for 20 years. So I'm not saying you got to lift weights for 20 years to be strong. You only really need a good solid 2 or 3 years of weightlifting to be really strong. If we can incorporate more sports science, more efficient sports science practices and nutrition, people can get really strong and really fit and they don't need steroids, right? But the problem is most people don't know how to do that. So they see right, I'm going to get those steroids. I'm going to train my ass off and to hell with the consequences, right? Because that's the thing. It's very short-sighted. Guys, why is steroid abuse so widespread in jiu-jitsu? Because jiu-jitsu is freaking hard. So a good friend of mine, Dustin, he went to train with the Mendez brothers many years ago. And this is early days. I think he was a blue belt, purple belt. Dustin is now a superstar in the world of yoga. And this guy used to be is still a beast to this day, but he's gone more down the yoga path. He owns many studios. He's very famous. But I remember watching Dustin as a blue belt and just being a weapon. And I was a white belt and he went to purple when I went to blue. And I always kind of looked at him like, dang, I don't know if I want to compete against him, because at that time he was just carving it up in the competition scene, Dustin Brown. And Dustin told me one time that he had gone to train with the Mendez brothers and he had said to them, man, I'm so tired all the time. I train in the morning, I train at lunch, I go and sleep, I'm sore, I wake up, I come train at night, I'm wrecked. And they were like, you need the heart of a champion. You should do yoga. He's like, what? He's like, I do yoga. He's like, but yoga makes me tired as well. He's like, I haven't been doing yoga because I've been doing all this other training. What do you guys do? And they're like, yeah, we train 3 times a day and yoga helps us to recover. He's like, so you train 4 times a day? They're like, yeah. And sometimes we lift weights. He's like, what? So you train 5 times a day? They're like, yeah, it's normal. He's like, no, that's not normal. He knew in himself that that was a lie. Like you cannot, not that they weren't doing the training, they were doing the training. But you cannot keep that kind of training up without the body absolutely plummeting and bottoming out and you crashing your immune system without help. Right. So that's the thing. When you enter the competitive world of BJJ, you may go up against somebody who's on steroids. And you don't have to be a black belt top tier competitor. You might be a white belt. You've gone to Grappling Industries, and the guy across from you is like a kind of amateur bodybuilder / powerlifter, played rugby, has done a couple of cycles of Tren or Decker or whatever, and now he's going to try and rip your freaking head off, and you're just some normal dude or some normal woman just trying to get your train on, get your jiu-jitsu on, and this person has the unfair advantage. You might be a similar size or weight, but they are chemically enhanced, and that is not freaking fair. So it's like, why are we ignoring it? Do we make jiu-jitsu easier? No, jiu-jitsu will always be hard. Could we be better at training for jiu-jitsu so we can deal with it better? Yes. But the reason why so many people are taking steroids is it starts at the top. It starts with those who don't know any better. So people who are training as hard as they can, someone said, hey, take some steroids. It'll help you out. You'll be able to go all day. It'll be sweet. And then that enables them. And then they think, hey, this is the way to go. When actually they just don't know any better. The cool thing about being in Australia, having had my experience also in the world of strength conditioning and meeting other athletes and meeting other coaches, there are ways and means for you to get better, which don't require steroids. It's that simple. Now, if you're an average, you're an average jiu-jitsu person, you're like, oh man, I train 3 times a week. I don't even think about this steroid stuff. It's like, you're just talking another language to me. I don't care. The reason why you should possibly care is we're going to talk about Gordon Ryan. Now, Joey always laughs at how, he's like, oh, don't trigger JT. Don't mention Gordon Ryan's name. Because look, I don't think he's the best person, so I don't think he's a great role model. But then also that said, there's some other factors where I look at Gordon Ryan and people look at him like he's a role model. He's not a role model. He is not something that you should go by in terms of you should act like him as a person. No. Has he got great jiu-jitsu? Yeah. The guy has had digestive issues for 5 years on and off. So this guy can't even digest food. How did he get so bloody big? I mean, even Gordon Ryan's head is bigger. Like, if you look at it, he needs a head slimming program. Like, Gordon Ryan did not miss head day. You know what I mean? Like, look at Gordon Ryan's head. It's fat. If you look at footage of him when he first won EBI heavyweights, that's when he got on people's radar. I mean, I was already kind of aware of him because Craig was stalking him and watching his fights, right? So I became aware of him through looking at what Craig was looking at. And his head was slimmer. His head has literally grown. His whole body has grown. How has a guy who can't digest food put on 10 or 15 kilos of muscle and kept it? Almost impossible. It's got to be the drugs, right? So here's the deal. It is absolutely terrible when young guys and young girls are looking up to various people. And I mean, and their heroes are possibly on drugs, right? And that's the thing. It's an unrealistic expectation. And this flows on down to everyone else in the culture saying, oh, yeah, almost T2 or T size. Almost. Actually, I would say bigger. Here's the deal. Thanks for tuning in, Jeremy. Thank you, Adrian, for your comments. Guys, if you have any questions or comments about stuff that's unrelated to this topic, please feel free to chime in with those because I'm happy to talk about those. I don't want you guys just to think that this is just a rant about steroids because I feel like we don't fully appreciate the severity and how widespread it is. And then also the fact that we can change it if we approach the sport differently. So Why is it widespread? Because jiu-jitsu is really freaking hard. And if you want to be the best, you got to train a lot, right? And it doesn't mean you're trying to be a big, muscly Schwarzenegger kind of human. It just makes you be able to bounce back every single day and do the hard thing every single day. So some people might argue people who take steroids are actually making their lives harder because they're exposing themselves to more hard work over and over. But really what they're doing is they're gaining an unfair advantage to be able to do it. That is the main point, my friends, because our international body has said it's against the rules and therefore they should not do it. And when people do it, they're not penalized. What can we do about it? Did the yogi get his black belt? Yes. Dustin is indeed a black belt. Dustin's a legend, and he just, it's interesting because like Dustin's like a really slim guy, super healthy guy. He recognized that there was drugs in, wasn't aware of it at the time. This was early days jiu-jitsu back like 2009, 2010. He could see that these top guys were doing steroids, and he was like, you know what? I don't want a piece of that, you know? So the reason why I mentioned Dustin is not because he in any way has anything to do with it. He told me that he saw these top level guys and he knew straight away based off their training, because he was a PT at one stage, they were training way too much to be able to keep it up and stay healthy without enhancement. That's why I mentioned it. I just want to put that context around it. Well, poor old Ronnie. I mean, look, it's one of those things, guys. We love to see people big and muscly, but man, it comes at a cost, right? Joey said this a number of times. You know, it comes from Blade Runner. The light that burns twice as bright burns half as long, right? You will borrow from tomorrow. So you might get some glory today, but you are not going to be living it in 20 years. You'd probably be dead of a heart attack. Now, here's the deal. Yeah, the natty division versus the acai division, and this division. And this is what I'm going to talk about, guys. How can we clean up competition in the name of the art? I truly believe that we could separate it. We could have tested events where everybody coming in has to be tested before the event, right? And then we have untested events like the ADCC. They don't do drug testing at the ADCC. They just want big monsters to go crazy. And hey, who doesn't want that, right? Like that's entertaining, but that is not healthy. And you got to know that that's what it is. There are people out there who are like, oh, nah, they're just, you know, they've got good nutrition in that. No, they don't. They actually have poor nutrition. Like they eat a lot, but they're taking a lot of drugs. So that's the thing. Like, it's unfair, guys. Like, if I really break it down for you, like, if it was like really the case, when you lift weights and you work your ass off, and your muscles get really sore and you work to a level of fatigue, your body then releases a higher level of growth hormone. It then causes your body to release a higher level of like blood serum testosterone, but that only lasts for a period of time. It like goes up and then might last a couple of hours and it goes back down. And then if you want that again, you're going to have to work out again, but your muscles get sore, right? So maybe you don't work out for a day or two, or maybe you're a savage. You work out every day and you just hurt all the time. But you got to find that fine balance of like getting a bit of a boost coming down, bit of a boost coming down, right? When you take steroids, it is up all the time, 24/7. You cannot help but grow. And what they're showing now is there's residual long-term effects. So when you get those cell changes, even when you stop taking the drugs, that you have changed on a cellular level, that you will grow more muscle now not taking steroids. It actually changes the compositional structure of your muscle proteins. So go think about that. That's where I feel like lifetime bans from natural competition could actually be effective to make people go, you know what, I'm not going to do that. So I think definitely when we look at it, there's plenty of people out there who are like, yo, I'm 100% natty. It's like, yeah, dude, you're a featherweight. Like, it's obvious you're natty. You need to just probably eat a chicken. Like, you know, you're vegan and you don't, you know, like you're not getting in enough nutrition to even grow muscle. So we don't care that you're like, I'm a natty warrior. It's like, yeah, you're anorexic. You probably need to talk to a psychologist about why you don't eat food and your relationship to food. What I'm trying to push here, guys, or what I'm trying to promote is that jiu-jitsu could be different. Now, it is actually up to us to start talking about this more. and call it out and say, hey, Gordon Ryan, you've joked around about taking steroids. How about you front up and show us what you're using? Because that guy is selling DVDs about mindset and why mindset makes you a champion. Well, how about this? You have a weak mindset, Gordon Ryan, because you thought, I need drugs. How about that? How about you shouldn't be coaching people on how to be like you when actually you are not like you? You are the chemically enhanced version of who you are. So that's why I have beef with these certain things. Not because, oh, I'm a Puritan or anything like this. It's just like if you're going to try and help others to improve, it should be ethical. Like what you're selling them isn't BS. What you're selling them or what you're helping them with is knowledge and self improvement. And steroids is not that. So I put this out there, guys. Testing is expensive, but could we make it cheaper? And could those organizations that are profiting off making these drug tests so expensive bring the cost down? Could it be subsidized? The IBJJF has hundreds of millions of dollars. They could make it better testing, but they want to keep their money, so they don't. Really, guys, it comes down to profitability. And that's what I want to say, guys. It's about entertainment and it's about money. That's simply what it comes down to. It's not about what's good for you and it's not about what's good for BJJ. It's really about making money and entertaining people. So, look, are we entertainers or athletes? Like if you're Mark Wahlberg, sure, take the steroids. If you're The Rock, take all the steroids. Whatever. You're an entertainer. You know, you've got money for a triple bypass like Arnold, right? But if you're an athlete and you're trying to do this legit and you don't have money for steroids, like I grew up relatively poor. Like I had people trying to push steroids on me at the gym since I was 12 years old. And I just knew it was wrong from the go. But I there's no way I've ever had, I was lucky if I had money for whey protein, right? You know, it's one of those things that like, if you are not coming from a position of advantage where you can be like, yeah, I'm going to do this, forget what that does for my health. When you start setting the example for others, then I feel transparency is more important. And I honestly believe long term, if we want to improve jiu-jitsu, we need to separate the natural from the unnatural. Anyway, that's it, guys. I just want to put it out there to you, see what kind of discussion we could create, and also see what people thought. So thank you for tuning in. I appreciate you guys, all your comments. And look, if you want to have this discussion in more detail, let's do it. Because I honestly believe steroids is messing up jiu-jitsu, and we're not talking about it. All right, my friends, thank you very much for tuning in. I appreciate all of y'all. And between now and when I see you next, stay bulletproof, but also natural.